The sky had been wrong since morning. Ruth Calloway had noticed it the way she noticed most things, practically, filing it away without stopping, because there was the store to get to and the provisions to collect and the boy to manage and the wagon axle that had been making a sound for 2 weeks that she had not had looked at, and the sky being wrong was one more thing on a list that was always longer than the day. She had been a widow for 14 months. She had learned, in those months, to assess risk the way you assess weather, not with fear, but with the attention of someone who understands they are the only margin between their child and whatever comes next. The axle broke on the way home. A slow wrongness becoming sudden, the wagon listing and settling at an angle that told her, before she got down to look, that this was not something she was going to fix on the road. She got down. She looked. She confirmed what she already knew. By then the sky had stopped being wrong in the distant way and had become wrong in the immediate way. The clouds she had noted that morning were now a wall from the north with the intention of a storm that has been building for 3 days and has finally found its moment. 6 miles to home. A boy of 3 already asking questions. Provisions she could not carry, and a blanket, and her coat, and the knowledge, clear, cold, practical, that she needed to move. She took the boy. She took the blanket and the coat and the smallest provision bag. She left everything else. She started walking. Eli Vance had been in the valley for 6 years. He had come in the winter of 1867, a strange time to arrive anywhere, but it had suited him in the way that difficult things sometimes suit people who are in the specific state of not caring much what happens next. 40 acres at the north end of the valley, a cabin that needed work, a barn that needed more. He had spent the first year fixing what needed fixing, which gave him enough to do that he didn't have to think about why he was there. He had been a soldier. He didn't talk about it, not because he was hiding it but because talking required engaging with it in a way he hadn't found useful. He had come out of the war in 1865 with the weightlessness of a man who has stopped expecting things, which was not the same as peace but which he had mistaken for peace for several years before he understood the difference. What happened in the winter of 1868, the second winter in the valley, was not something he spoke about either. He had gone out in a storm like this one to look for a neighbor's child who had wandered. He had found her. He had brought her back. He had not been fast enough to prevent what the cold had already done. He had learned after that to read snow the way he read everything that had cost him something, with total attention, without the mercy of distraction. He was reading it now, coming home from the south pasture, when he saw the figure in the white. She was moving wrong. Not the shape of her, not that she was a woman, not the bundle she was carrying. The movement, the specific stumble and correct of someone whose legs were going but whose will was still ahead of them, which was a kind of wrong he knew the end of. He saw the bundle shift in the small arm that came out of it. He turned the horse. He did not call out. Calling out in a storm was more for the caller than the recipient, and he did not have that time. He came alongside her from the left. She heard the horse and turned, and the expression on her face was not fear. That was the first thing that registered about Ruth Calloway. Her first response to a large stranger coming out of a blizzard on horseback was not fear but the rapid assessment of someone determining whether this was a resource. He held out his arms for the boy. She looked at him for 1 second. Then she handed the boy over. He felt the cold of the child, too cold, not the dangerous cold yet, but near the edge, and said, quietly, "My cabin is a mile north. Can you walk a mile?" "Yes," she said. He believed her. He moved the horse closer, reached down, she took his hand, and he pulled her up behind him with the efficiency of a man who has done similar things and is not performing them. He gave her the boy back to hold. They rode. The cabin was spare and functional, with a fire he had left banked before going out. It came back with attention and 2 additional logs before he did anything else. Ruth stood with the boy against her chest and watched him build the fire with the competence of a man who understood that warmth was first and everything else was after. She had not said anything since the road. He had not asked her to. When the fire was going he took the boy from her, she let him, and he noted this, the trust of exhaustion, and set him close to the heat, wrapped in the blanket from the chest by the wall. The boy was awake, watching, with the attention of a 3-year-old who has understood something important is happening and is deciding how to feel about it. Eli crouched to the boy's level. "What's his name?" Over his shoulder, without turning. "Daniel," she said. "Daniel." To the boy. "You did well out there." The boy considered this, then nodded with the gravity of someone accepting a report that confirms what he already suspected about himself. Ruth made a sound that was not quite a laugh. Eli stood. "There's water heating. Food when you're ready." "Thank you," she said, the first complete sentence. He nodded and went to check the water. The storm closed the road by nightfall. He told her without apology or elaboration, the road north was impassable, the road south was worse, visibility had dropped to the length of a man's arm. She would need to stay until it broke. A day at least, possibly 2. Ruth received this with the practical attention she brought to everything. She asked where she should sleep. He showed her the back room and told her he would stay near the fire. She started to object. He told her Daniel needed warmth and the back room had the secondary stove and she would not be arguing about this. She looked at him. She did not argue. They ate. Daniel ate more than Eli would have expected and fell asleep against his mother's arm before the bowl was empty. Ruth put him down in the back room and came back out and sat across the fire from Eli, and they were quiet in the particular silence of strangers in a small space who have not yet decided what to do about it. "I'm Ruth Calloway," she said. "Eli Vance," he said. "I know who you are. You bought the Harmon property 6 years ago." "Yes. I'm 4 miles south." "We've never spoken." "No," he said. She looked at the fire. He looked at the fire. "The axle had been going for 2 weeks," she said. "I should have had it looked at." "Yes," he said. She glanced at him. "Most people would say it wasn't my fault." "Most people would be wrong," he said. "It was your fault. You know it and you'll remember it and you won't do it again. That's more useful than telling you it wasn't." She was quiet for a moment. "My husband died 14 months ago," she said. "I'm still learning what I don't know yet." He looked at the fire. "That takes longer than 14 months, he said. Something in his voice told her not to ask what he meant. She was perceptive enough to hear it and careful enough to listen. "How long does it take?" she asked instead. He thought about it honestly. "I don't know yet," he said. She nodded. That was, she would tell him later, the answer she trusted most. The storm kept them for 2 days. They did not talk constantly. They talked the way people talk when they have a shared task, Daniel to keep occupied, food to prepare, wood to bring in, the small negotiations of a space arranged for 1 and now holding 3. She was useful in the way of someone who has been managing alone long enough that usefulness had become instinct. She reorganized the kitchen corner on the second morning in a way that was more efficient than what he had. He noticed and said nothing. She was right. He told her about the storm of 1868 on the second evening. Daniel had asked, with the directness of 3-year-olds, why there were 2 pairs of small boots by the back door that were too small for Eli. He had been going to say something vague. He looked at the boots and said instead, "A little girl left them here. She didn't come back for them." Ruth put her hand on Daniel's shoulder, gently, and he understood and went back to what he had been doing. She looked at Eli across the cabin. "What happened?" she asked. He told her. The storm. The neighbor's child. The finding and the too late. He told it without embellishment, without self-pity, with the precise economy of a man who has carried something for 6 years and knows its exact weight. She listened without looking away. When he finished, she said, "You've been watching storms ever since." "Yes," he said. "And today you came home early." He looked at her. "I come home early when the sky is wrong," he said. She held that for a moment. The sky was wrong this morning, she said. I noticed and I went anyway. I know, he said. You told me. Does that make me foolish? He thought about it honestly. It makes you someone who had things to do and not enough margin and made a decision that turned out to be wrong, he said. That's most decisions, eventually. She looked at him for a moment. You're not what I expected, she said. What did you expect? I don't know. The man who lives alone on the North End and doesn't come to town. I had a picture. Was I in it? Not clearly, she said. He almost smiled. She saw it, the beginning of it, arrested before it completed, the expression of a man who had gotten out of the habit and was finding it came back slower than expected. She did not comment on it. She turned back to the fire. He was grateful for that. The road opened on the morning of the third day. He had fixed the wagon axle the previous afternoon and retrieved her provisions from the road on the second day while she and Daniel were inside. He hitched his horse and loaded what he had retrieved. She stood in the doorway watching him work. Daniel beside her, holding her hand. I'll drive you, he said. You don't need to, she said. No, he agreed. She looked at him. All right. They drove south in the clean white silence of a valley after a storm, the sky the blue that comes after heavy weather, the snow on the mountains catching the early light. Daniel fell asleep between them. I don't know how to thank you, she said. You don't need to. You fixed the wagon. It needed fixing. You went out in the storm for the provisions. They were there. She was quiet a moment. Eli. He looked at her. Thank you, she said. Simply. He nodded and looked back at the road. For miles south, he helped her unload and made sure the cabin was warm. He didn't come in. He stood at the door and looked at her and Daniel and said goodbye. She said goodbye. He rode north. He came back on Saturday. Not with a reason, no question about the property, no pretense of business. He came on Saturday afternoon because it had been 4 days and he had been thinking about the 2 pairs of small boots by the back door, and about a woman who noticed the sky was wrong and went anyway, and about the way she had looked at him when he said I don't know yet, which was the way people looked at something they trusted. He did not know what he was doing. He was doing it anyway. Ruth opened the door and looked at him for a moment. Daniel appeared at her side, recognized him, and said his name Eli, with the confidence of a child who has decided someone belongs in his world and sees no reason to be uncertain about it. Eli looked at the boy. He looked at Ruth. I thought I'd see how the repair held, he said. The repair is fine, she said. Good, he said. They looked at each other. Come in, she said. He came in. Outside, the valley was still and white and enormous, and the sky above it was the clean blue of after, and somewhere to the north, 6 years of careful and deliberate solitude was quietly becoming something else, not ending, exactly, but turning, the way a road turns when you have been walking it long enough to accept that it does not go in only one direction. It goes where it goes. He had learned, finally, to let it.